My brother got the bigger bedroom, a new laptop, dad's old truck, plus every easy excuse. I got told, quit complaining, you're not special. Last Friday, Mom called because my brother needed $7,200 before his lease deadline. I said, quit complaining, Mom. He's not special. Then I hung up. My name is Wade Kimball. I am 31 years old. I own a franchise location of a national auto parts supply chain in Westerville, Ohio. I have run it for 4 years. Before that, I worked in a warehouse for 3 years to learn every part of the operation from the floor up. Before that, I worked 2 jobs through community college because nobody was going to pay for it. I own a 2-bedroom condo 12 minutes from my store. I have 1 car payment left. My credit score is 791. I built every single thing I have from scratch. I am not saying that to impress you. I am saying it because you need to understand what it means when I tell you that nobody handed me anything. Not once. Not ever. My brother Gary is 34. He has lived in a Columbus apartment for 2 years, the longest he has stayed anywhere since he stopped moving back into our parents' house between situations. He has never owned anything. He is not in school. He has a job at a sporting goods store that he has held for 7 months, which is longer than usual for him. Most of his jobs last 4 or 5 months. The sporting goods store is a good stretch. My mother is Connie Kimball. She is 58. She has never once, in 31 years, treated the difference between my brother's life and my life as something that required examination. My dad is Earl Kimball. He is 61. He is a decent man who learned somewhere along the way that the distance between knowing something and doing something about it was a place he could live comfortably. I will come back to my dad because he matters in a way that is easy to miss. I need to give you the foundation, not as a list of grievances, as evidence. The kind of evidence that, when you see it assembled, stops feeling like a complaint and starts feeling like a record. The bedroom. I was 9. Gary was 12. We shared a room that was already too small for 2 kids and the accumulated equipment of different ages. Gary had a desk. I had a desk. We had bunk beds we were both too old for. The room had 1 window that faced the side of the house. The 3rd bedroom was my dad's study. He had a desk and a chair and a filing cabinet and a box of golf magazines from 2003 that nobody had opened. The room smelled like dust and old paper. It was not a useful room. It was just a room my dad was in sometimes. Gary started complaining about the shared room in October of that year. I remember October because it was around Halloween and we had been fighting about something, as brothers do, and Gary told my mother he needed his own space. He said it was a matter of privacy. He said it the way 12-year-olds say things when they have just learned that expressing a need loudly enough gets results. 2 weeks later, my dad's study became Gary's room. Nobody asked me anything. Nobody explained the decision to me or talked about it, as though my position in it mattered. The golf magazines went to the garage. The filing cabinet went to the basement. A bed went into the study. Gary moved his things across the hall. I stayed in the original room. Smaller. 1 window facing the neighbor's fence. The bunk beds replaced with a single bed that fit the space better now that I was the only one in it. My mother sat with me on that bed the evening it was all done and explained that Gary was older and needed more privacy to develop. She said when I was Gary's age, I would understand. She said she hoped I could be mature about it. Then she said it. Quit complaining. You're not special. I was 9 years old. I looked at her. I did not say anything. I had already started learning that not saying anything was the correct response in that house. The truck. 6 years later. I was 19. I had been working at the warehouse for 8 months. I drove my mother's Civic to work, with her permission, for days a week. On the days she needed the car, I took the bus. I did not complain about any of this because I understood it was a temporary arrangement. I was saving money. I had a plan. My dad had a 2004 F-150. Blue. Well-maintained. He had used it for runs to the hardware store and weekend projects, and nothing very demanding for most of the decade he had owned it. He was buying a smaller car now, something cheaper on gas, more practical for his daily drive to work. The truck was going to sit in the driveway. I found out about this because I overheard my parents talking about it one evening. My dad said he was thinking about selling it. My mother said they should think about who in the family could use it. I remember standing in the hallway and thinking, I could use it. I have a license. I have a job. I drive a borrowed car 4 days a week and take the bus on the 5th. I did not say any of that. I went to my room. I decided I would wait and see. I thought that was the reasonable thing to do. I thought that if my parents were going to think about who in the family could use the truck, they would probably arrive at the same conclusion I had. That Saturday, Gary came over. He had been living 20 minutes away in an apartment that his girlfriend's parents were covering because Gary had been between jobs since February. He came over at 10 in the morning. I was at work. I came home at 2 in the afternoon, and the truck was not in the driveway. I walked inside. My mother was in the kitchen. She looked up and said hi the way you say hi to someone you are mildly relieved to see. I asked where the truck went. She said Gary needed it. She said he was starting a new job next week, and the commute was difficult by bus. She said I had access to her car when I needed it, and that was not going to change. She said she hoped I understood. Then she said, "Be happy for your brother." I stood in the kitchen doorway. I thought about the math. 19 years old, full-time warehouse job, bus commute 5 days a week. Versus Gary, 22 years old, no job since February, living on someone else's subsidy. $8,500 worth of truck, transferred without conversation. I said okay. I went to my room. I sat on my bed for a while. My dad came and knocked on my door that evening. He opened it and stood in the doorway. He looked at me for a moment. I looked at him. He had his hands in his pockets. He said, "You're going to be fine, Wade." Then he closed the door and went back down the hall. I thought about that sentence for a long time afterward. It was not wrong. I was going to be fine. I was the kind of person who was going to be fine. The question I did not ask because I was 19 and did not have the words yet was whether being fine was a goal or a lower bound. The laptop. I almost left this one out because it is smaller and because by the time it happened, I had already started to understand the pattern. But I want you to have it because the pattern only means something if you see it consistently. I was 17. Gary was 20. He was home from his first semester at a community college he had enrolled in mostly because my parents wanted him to try something. He was home for winter break. He needed a laptop for the spring semester. His had died. My parents bought him a laptop. It was a good one. I know this because I had been wanting a laptop for 2 years and knew exactly which ones cost what. The one they bought Gary cost around $1,100. I had a laptop I had saved up for myself at 15 that was 3 years old and freezing regularly. Nobody offered to buy me a laptop. I did not ask. I saved up and bought a refurbished one the following spring for $340, and it lasted me through the rest of high school and into college. The point is not the laptop. The point is the consistency. Bedroom, truck, laptop. 3 items across 8 years. 3 decisions made without discussion. 3 times the same operating principle. Gary has a need. The need gets met. Wade will handle it. What I understood by 18 was that I was not an afterthought in my family. An afterthought implies forgetting. My mother had not forgotten me. She had categorized me. I was the one who did not require the same maintenance. That was her accurate observation and her sincere belief. And the thing she did not understand was that she had made it true by acting on it for so long. By not providing, she had produced someone who did not need provision. She thought that was a good thing. It took me until I was 30 to understand what it had actually cost. I am 23. Tuesday in March. 2 envelopes on my kitchen table. The first is Gary's car insurance bill. My mother called 2 weeks ago and asked if I could cover 1 month. Gary was between jobs again. She and my dad were stretched. She said it would be temporary. I said yes. I always said yes because I had not yet built the vocabulary for no within my family. Yes was what I had been shaped for. The second envelope is from my dentist. A reminder for the appointment I rescheduled 3 weeks ago because the copay was not possible that month. Warehouse pay, community college tuition, my own rent, Gary's car insurance now too. I pay Gary's insurance. I call the dentist and reschedule again. I put both envelopes in the recycling bin under the kitchen sink. Then I sit at my kitchen table and look at the wall for a while. That is not the moment I decided anything. I want to be clear about that. At 23, I was still telling myself that this was how families worked. Some people needed more. I happened to need less. That was okay. But something shifted, not dramatically, not a decision, so much as a reorientation. The part of my brain I use professionally, the part that tracks inventory and margins and trends over time, started paying attention to my family with the same flat precision it brought to everything else. 2 weeks after the envelopes, Gary and I had dinner. He called and suggested it. I said sure. We went to a burger place near his apartment. It was a Tuesday. The place was half empty. He did not mention the car insurance. He did not say thank you or acknowledge that it had happened. He talked for most of the meal. A band he had seen. A girl in his building he was thinking about asking out. An app idea he had been thinking about that would connect people with local musicians for private events. He was enthusiastic about the app. He had been thinking about it a lot. I asked a few questions. I listened. I ate my burger. At the end of the meal, the check came. Gary picked it up and looked at it. I watched him. He took out his wallet. He put down a credit card. He said, I got my half. He paid for his half. I paid for mine. We said goodbye in the parking lot. I drove home in my mother's Civic. I thought about that dinner for a long time. Not with bitterness. With the same flat attention I had started bringing to everything in the family. Gary had called me for dinner. Gary had talked through the whole meal. Gary had split the bill. Gary had not said thank you for the car insurance that was still being paid. Gary had not done any of this because he was cruel. Gary had done all of it because he genuinely did not track it. In Gary's version of his life, things worked out. People helped. That was just how it was. He had been taught that from the beginning by the same people who had taught me that I did not require the same help. That was when I stopped being angry about any of it. You cannot be angry at a system. You can only decide whether you're going to keep being part of it. I built my life the way you build anything without a blueprint. One decision in the right order, over time, without looking for permission. By 25, I was managing the warehouse. By 27, I was managing a store location for someone else, which taught me everything I would need to run my own. By 29, I had saved enough for the franchise buy-in and had a clean financial history and a business plan detailed enough that the loan officer I worked with told me he rarely saw applications this prepared. I thanked him. I did not explain. I went to family events. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, both birthdays. I arrived on time and brought food and helped clean up and stayed until it was appropriate to leave. I did not talk about the business much because the conversation usually circled back to Gary within a few exchanges. Gary came to most events late. Gary's arrivals were events. My mother would stand. My dad would say, there he is, like a man who had been waiting for something to arrive. There would be a plate made and a seat saved and questions about Gary's current situation and how he was doing and whether things were looking up. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. The pattern is the evidence. I need you to see the pattern clearly so that when I tell you what happened on Friday, it makes sense as a conclusion rather than an outburst. The text chain started the year I turned 23, the same year as the envelopes. The first text came a few days after I covered Gary's car insurance. My mother wrote, I know this is a lot to ask. Just be patient with him. He's going through something. I did not delete it. Not on purpose. It just sat there, unfinished feeling, the way a sentence sits when you know it is going to mean something later, even if you do not know what yet. The second came 2 years later. Gary had totaled the car, and my mother asked if I would co-sign a replacement loan. I said I cannot do that. She said she understood. An hour later, just be patient with him. He's going through something. Same words, different year, different situation. I noticed. I kept the text. By 28, I was doing something I had not planned to do. I was building an assessment, not on paper. In my head, the way I carry numbers that matter. That is my professional skill. I assess value. I look at what exists. I identify what it is worth. I track patterns across time. And I produce an accurate picture of what is real. I do not adjust for sentiment. I do not shift numbers because they are uncomfortable. I write down what is there. I started applying that skill to the family. The bedroom conversion. The value is not a dollar amount. It is 9 years of the message that Gary's development mattered more than mine. I leave that one on the list without a number. The truck, $8,500, private market, transferred without conversation. The car insurance, $1,800 a year, I covered 2 years. $3,600. The laptop, $1,100, purchased by my parents for Gary. I bought my own for $340. The business idea at 26, $3,000, given outright, not discussed with me, not offered to me. Gary ran the idea for 4 months. The DUI at 29, $4,400 for the attorney. My parents covered it. My mother mentioned it to me the same way she mentioned a neighbor's renovation. Just a fact of family life. Smaller amounts spread across years that I know about because my mother mentioned them in passing. A car repair, a month of utilities, first and last month's deposit on an apartment, a medical bill, an emergency that turned out not to be an emergency. By 30, I had a number, north of $90,000 across 20 years. Consistent. No single item dramatic enough to point at. The whole picture, seen at once, is what is dramatic. I was 30 years old, and I owned a franchise and had a credit score of 791 and had built all of it without a dollar of family support. My brother was 33 and could not make rent. I held that number for a while. I did not do anything with it. I just needed to know what was real. Now I knew. Christmas last year. I arrived at $12.50 with a pan of roasted vegetables and a bakery pie. I let myself in. My dad was in the living room. We talked for a few minutes. He asked whether business was good and whether I was seeing anyone. I said yes and no. He nodded and turned back to the game. My mother was in the kitchen. She put me to work on the potatoes, and we talked about her book club and a neighbor situation and whether I had tried the new breakfast place on her side of town. It was fine. The kind of conversation that rests on top of other conversations. Gary arrived at 2:40. Dinner had been on the table since 1:30. My mother had called him twice, and my dad had called once. When Gary came through the door, my mother stood up and went to the hallway. I heard her say his name. I heard my dad get up from the couch and say, "There he is." Gary came into the kitchen and gave me a side hug and said, "Hey, man." And I said, "Hey." Then my mother was asking him about the apartment and the job and whether he was eating enough, and Gary said he was doing okay. My mother made his plate. She sat next to him. She asked follow-up questions. She laughed at something he said within the first 5 minutes. My dad asked me if I wanted more potatoes. I said no, thank you. After dinner, I went to use the bathroom and came back through the hallway past the living room. The mantel above the fireplace has family photos. It has always had family photos. There is a photo from Gary's college graduation. He graduated in 2013. He is in his cap and gown. My parents are on either side of him. All three are smiling. My mother has her arm through his. I graduated in 2011. My parents were there. We went to a diner afterward and had a good lunch. I remember the lunch. I remember it as a good day. There is no photo of my graduation anywhere in that house. Not on the mantel. Not on the hallway wall. Not anywhere I have ever found. I stood at the entrance to the living room for maybe 4 seconds. I looked at the mantel. I looked at the wall on either side of it. I went back to the table. I did not say anything. After the dishes, my dad found me in the living room and sat next to me on the couch. He had a glass of water. He looked at the television, which was off. He said, "You're doing good, Wade." He said it to the television. Not to me exactly, like he was saying it to the room. Then he finished his water and went to help put things away. I have thought about that sentence more than I have thought about most things my father has ever said to me. I have thought about what it means when the most direct acknowledgement a man can give you is aimed at a turned-off screen. I have thought about whether he knew what he was doing and said it anyway, or whether he genuinely thought it was enough. I think both things are true. My cousin Darnell is 33. He grew up one street over from us. He is at every family event and has been his whole life. He caught me in the driveway around 4:30, loading my pan and pie dish into my trunk to head home. He came out after me. He leaned against the side of my car with his hands in his jacket pockets. It was cold. He did not seem in a hurry to go back inside. He said, "Man, I don't know how you do it." I looked at him and said, "Do what?" He looked at me the way you look at someone when you have something specific in mind and you're deciding whether to say it. Then he looked at the street, at the neighbor's bare tree. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. I knew what he meant. Darnell had grown up one street over. He had watched the same things I had watched across 30 years. He had his own accounting of what the family was. He pushed off my car and said he would see me at New Year's. I said yeah. He went back inside. I drove home, made coffee, sat at my kitchen table with my phone face down for about 20 minutes without opening anything. Then I went to bed. January, first week of the new year. I am in my car in the parking lot of my store before opening. I do this sometimes when I want to think without being interrupted. The lot is empty. I have a coffee from the place 2 blocks over. The store is dark behind its windows. I pull up the text chain on my phone. I have not looked at it recently. I know what is in it, but something about Christmas, about the mantle and the graduation photo, about Darnell not finishing his sentence, makes me want to count. I want to see the number. I scroll to the beginning. March 2009. The car insurance month. I know this is a lot to ask. Just be patient with him. He's going through something. I scroll forward, not reading carefully, looking for the phrase. 2011. Gary quit his first real job after 3 months. My mother asked if I could chip in on his rent for 1 month while he figured things out. I said I could not. She sent the phrase 2 days later. 2013. The car cosign request I declined. She sent it an hour after we got off the phone. 2014. Gary moved back home for 8 months. My mother sent it unprompted, like a preemptive answer to a question I had not asked. 2016. The business idea. $3,000 already given. She sent the phrase the following week, after the fact, still as though she was asking something of me. 2018. The DUI. She called me the day after. We talked for 40 minutes, which mostly meant I listened. A week later, the phrase appeared in a text. Again, unprompted. 2019. New apartment. First and last month. She sent me a message to tell me it had happened. She added the phrase at the end. Not asking, just appending it. Habit. 2020. Job loss. Same phrase. 2021. Car repair. Same phrase. 2022. Medical bill. Same phrase. 2023. The Columbus apartment move. First and last month again. Same phrase. 2 more I am choosing not to detail because the specifics do not add anything. The phrase is the detail. I count them. 14. 14 times in 14 years. Same sentence. Different situations. Same sentence. I put my phone in my pocket. I sit with that number. 14 activations. 14 moments in which my mother identified a Gary situation and sent me the same message. Not always asking for money. Sometimes just asking for patience. For my continued presence. For my compliance with a system that needed me on the other side of it, quiet, capable, not asking for anything myself. I open my work software on my phone. I build a quick asset timeline the way I would for any property assessment. I have the numbers in my head already. I am just making them visible to myself in a format I understand. $94,000. 20 years. Every item documented with the same precision I bring to any professional assessment. I close the app. I finish my coffee. I go inside and open the store. There is something I need to say before Friday. There is a version of me that would have sent the $7,200. I want to be honest about that. The 23-year-old sitting at the kitchen table with 2 envelopes would have transferred the money and told himself it was fine. That version of me had covered car insurance and said yes to things he could not afford and filed it all away in a category labeled "This is what families do." I know that version of me because I was him for a long time. He is not a bad person. He just had not yet done the accounting. The accounting, once done, does not go away. You cannot unsee a number once you have built it accurately. $94,000. 14 texts. 1 graduation with no photo. 1 truck that was not a discussion. 1 bedroom that taught me, at 9 years old, what my place in the family was. The thing that my mother never understood, and still does not understand, is that she gave me something by doing all of this. She gave me independence. She gave me the knowledge that I could survive without support because she made sure I had to. I'm not grateful for the method, but the result is mine. I built it. She does not get to spend it. She also gave me the sentence. Quit complaining. You're not special. She said it to me enough times that I learned it by heart. She gave it to me like a tool. I use it the same way she had. I want to tell you something about the $7,200 specifically because people focus on that number. They think that is what this story is about. $7,200 is what I earn in about 3 weeks. I am 31 years old, and I have built a business from nothing, and 3 weeks of work would cover what Gary needed. I want you to understand that I am not a person for whom that amount was impossible. It was possible. It was entirely possible. But here is what $7,200 means to me at 31 that it would not have meant at 23. At 23, I would have transferred it and believed I was helping. At 31, I know that $7,200 in that direction buys one more month of the system. One more month of Gary not having to figure out what happens when nobody covers it. One more text from my mother with the same sentence. One more Christmas where she makes his plate and I eat mine quietly across the table. There's a thing that happens in families like mine that is hard to explain to people who did not grow up in one. The help does not help, not the recipient and not the giver. The help just extends the situation. Gary has been in situations for 34 years. My mother has been helping him through situations for 34 years. The situations have not gotten smaller or further apart. They have stayed the same size on a regular schedule. The help is not solving the problem. The help is the problem. I understood this at 30 in a way I could not have understood it at 23. At 23, I still believed that if you helped enough times, eventually the person did not need help anymore. That is not what the evidence showed me across 14 texts and 20 years of family accounting. The evidence showed me a system that was operating exactly as designed. I was the part of the system that could stop. If you have been the patient one in your family for longer than you should have been, I need you to hear this part. The strength is yours. You built it out of what you were not given. Nobody gets credit for what you built in the absence of their support. Stay here. The call is coming. It is short. It felt like 31 years. Friday, 3 weeks after the parking lot. 11:14 at night. I was on my couch. The television was on, but I was not watching it. My phone was face down on the arm of the couch. I had been in that position for about an hour, which is a thing I do sometimes when I do not want to do anything in particular and I'm not ready to go to bed. The phone buzzed. I flipped it over. Connie, Kimball. I looked at that for a moment. 11:14 on a Friday. I thought about what calls at 11:14 on a Friday had historically meant in my family. Then I answered. Her voice was warm. My mother's voice is always warm. It is one of her consistent qualities. She sounds glad to hear from you, even when she is the one calling with something specific. She asked how I was. I said fine. She said good, good. She asked about the store. I said it was going well. She said she was proud of me. She said that. I noted it. She said it the way people say things they believe, but do not feel in the moment of saying them. Then she told me about Gary. His lease was coming up for renewal. The landlord had raised the rent. Gary's situation was tight right now. The timing was difficult. He needed $7,200 before the renewal deadline on Monday, or he was going to lose the apartment. She went through it methodically, calmly. The way you present information you have rehearsed. She did not ask me. She explained. There is a difference between asking and explaining. Asking leaves space for no. Explaining assumes the answer and just presents the details. The transaction is already decided. You're just being informed of your part in it. I knew this move. I had been on the receiving end of this move for 31 years. I waited for her to finish. Then she said it. You know how he is. He never really asked for much. I had my phone in my left hand. In my right hand, I had my own phone, pulled from my pocket when her name appeared on the screen, open to the text chain. 14 texts. Same sentence across 14 years. He never really asked for much. I thought about the envelopes on my kitchen table at 23. I thought about the truck in the driveway and my dad going back inside. I thought about the graduation photo that is not anywhere in that house. I thought about the 14 texts and the $94,000 and the Christmas dinner where my mother stood up for Gary and made his plate and asked him follow-up questions and did not stand up when I arrived. I thought about the 9-year-old in a smaller bedroom looking at a fence. I thought about my dad sitting next to me on the couch on Christmas saying, "You're doing good," way to a turned-off television. I thought about 14 times my mother had sent the same sentence across 14 years. Be patient with him. He's going through something. And I thought, you gave me a sentence. You said it to me so many times I have it memorized. You meant it as an instruction. I kept it as a tool. Quit complaining, Mom. I'll let it land. 1 second. Maybe 2. He's not special. I ended the call. I put my phone on a coffee table, face up. I turned the television off. My condo was quiet. It is always quiet. I live alone, and I like that it is quiet and nobody calls me with emergencies at 11:14 at night. At 11:17, the phone lit up. Connie Kimball. I watched it. 4 rings. Then dark. At 11:21, it lit up again. Connie Kimball. 4 rings. Then dark. No voicemail. Not the first time. Not the second. I thought about that. She called back twice and had nothing prepared to say if I answered. She had not recorded a voicemail in advance because it had not occurred to her that she would need one. She had rung a doorbell. She had rung 100 times, and for the first time in 31 years, the door did not open. She did not have language for that outcome. That is the most honest thing that happened in this whole story. Those 2 missed calls. That is the moment she showed me exactly how much she had been counting on my compliance, without ever acknowledging that compliance was what she was counting on. I turned my phone face down. I went to bed. I slept fine. 3 days of nothing. No calls. No texts. My phone was just a phone. On day 4, the family group chat started. My aunt posted something cheerful. My dad sent a thumbs up. Gary responded about coming home for the weekend. My mother said she would make his favorite. Everything normal. Everything as though nothing had happened, or as though what had happened was a Wade problem and not a family event. I read the thread. I removed myself from the group on day 4. Not dramatically. 8 seconds. The thread disappeared. Gary called on day 5. I watched his name on the screen until it stopped. He did not call again. My dad texted on day 7. Your mother is upset. I think you should call her. I read it. I thought about the truck. I thought about the television. I thought about 40 years of watching things happen and saying, you're doing good, to whatever room he was standing in. I did not respond. My aunt called a week after my dad's text. She is my mother's sister. She has always been kind to me in the way that people are kind when they're not paying close enough attention to know whether kindness is enough. She said she had heard there was a situation and she hoped I was okay. I said I was okay. She said my mother meant well. I said I was sure she did. We talked about her garden for a few minutes and said goodbye. That was the last family contact for a while. 6 months later, Wednesday afternoon, I am at my store reviewing quarterly inventory projections. Good numbers. The expansion conversation with the regional office has moved from theoretical to preliminary. My phone buzzes. Darnell. Heard Gary moved back home. You okay? Gary's lease deadline passed in January. Nobody covered the $7,200. The apartment went to the next person on the landlord's list. Gary moved back to my parents' house and into the bedroom that still has his name on the door. I text Darnell. Yeah, good. He sends a thumbs up. That is all. A week after Darnell's message, my mother calls again. Afternoon this time. I let go to voicemail. She leaves one. I listen to it once. Her voice is still warm. She does not understand why I am doing this to the family. She has always done her best. Gary is struggling, and she does not know why I cannot find it in myself to be there for him. She hopes I will call when I am ready. She does not say the sentence. She does not say, quit complaining, or you're not special. She has a new script. In the new script, she is confused and hurt and doing her best and hoping I will come back when I am ready. She has not said sorry. She has not asked what she did or acknowledged that there was something she might have done. She has moved directly from the old script to the new one without pausing in the middle. I delete the voicemail. I go back to the inventory report. The store is having a good year. The second manager I hired in April has been strong. I am in early conversations about a second franchise location, which would be a different chapter entirely, one that I am not going to rush. My condo is quiet. A neighbor brings me tomatoes in August that I did not ask for and enjoy. 2 friends, and I have dinner once a month at rotating houses. I run 4 mornings a week. I sleep well most nights. Gary is in my parents' house. My mother is taking care of him. My dad is watching football and saying things to rooms. The system is operating exactly as designed. The only thing that has changed is that I am no longer in it. I check on that fact sometimes the way you check a number you have already verified. Every time I check, the answer is the same. I do not miss being in it. My mother told the extended family that I chose myself over family. That is how she framed it. At least one aunt agrees with her. I know this because Darnell keeps me informed, not as gossip, but as a courtesy, the way you tell someone what is being said about them so they're not blindsided. I have thought about that framing. Chose myself over family. as though those were the only two options. As though a 31-year-old man declining to wire $7,200 to cover his 34-year-old brother's rent is the same thing as abandonment. I did not choose myself over my family. I chose to stop being the part of the machine that nobody acknowledged was a part. That is a different thing. You can leave a system without abandoning the people in it. They were already not seeing me clearly. My absence does not change that. It just makes the accounting visible. Gary is in the bedroom with his name on the door. My mother is taking care of him. That is the life she built, and she is living it. I hope she finds it satisfying. I genuinely mean that. I hope Gary eventually figures out what a life built on his own resources feels like. I have no bitterness toward either of them. I have a number. $94,000 and 14 texts, and one graduation with no photo on the wall. That is the full accounting. I did not build it to be angry. I built it because I needed to know what was real. Now I know what is real. And I know that the condo and the store and the $791 and the one car payment left are also real. I built all of that. In the absence of the support that went somewhere else, I built it anyway. That is mine. If you have a text chain with someone who always found a reason for you to be patient, count how many times the same sentence appears. Just count them. See what the number is. The number is the answer to the question you have been afraid to ask. Share this with someone who has been patient long enough. They will know exactly what I mean.